So thank you for volunteering to do this today, Professora. Do you want to tell everybody your name?
My name is Adaljiza Sosa-Riddell, Ph.D.
And where do you live now?
I live in Glendale, California, a long way from my hometown.
Where is your hometown?
My hometown is Colton, California.
So the students have asked specifically to know more about what it was like during the time that Cesar Chavez was alive and organized for the UFW.
Okay.
So what do you remember about that time period?
It was a great time. Because remember, there was the time of the movimiento also. And there was a lot of action all over the country. There was the land grant issues being fought over there in New Mexico by Reyes de Pacijerina. And then there was Jorge Gonzalez's Crusade for Justice, which was being fought over in Denver, Colorado. And then there was the Razón Unida Party, which organized to pick up all the slack that the Democratic Party had let go by letting go of the Latino vote. And there were some national organizations like the Council of la Raza, which was based in New York. And then there was other farm workers organizing in other states like Florida, Arizona, Oregon, Washington.
Okay.
So there was a lot of action going on.
So how old were you during the 60s?
I was in my 30s.
Your 30s?
I was finished with my Ph.D.
Oh, wow.
And I was teaching at UC Davis. I was hired at UC Davis,
Okay.
which was quite a feat because it was hard to get a job in that time. And so to
were
get a
the
job.
students very involved with helping Cesar
Yes,
Chavez during that
yes,
time
yes,
period
they
when you were
were.
a professor?
The Mechistas had, and we're talking about the Movimiento Chicano, who organized the students as Mechistas. Mecha being Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán. And so they were very involved. Yes, we were involved in, and me as a professor was involved with them to the extent that I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And I went to many of the picket lines.
So you were at the picket
I was at the picket lines, yes. And we used to go in the mornings at 6 a.m. to picket the fields to entice or convince the farm workers to go on strike. This was during the grape strike. La huelga de las uvas, and there was also la huelga de la lechuga.
Okay.
And there's a song that I have in my collection that's called Rollos. I think it's Rollos de Aztlán. Ni la huelga de uvas. Ni tampoco ensalada por la huelga de lechuga. So we couldn't eat lettuce or eat grapes at that time. And I was 32, and I was hired at Davis, and went to all these sessions, and we used to take food and coffee to the farm workers at 6 o'clock in the morning before we went to class. And then I would take my ponchos that my sisters had made for me, they were pretty things, and I would give them to the women because they didn't have anything to wear in their cold, and be there at 6 a.m.
So you go at 6 a.m. and you brought clothes for people?
Yeah, we brought clothes, food and coffee, whatever. And there was also a lawyers group that were going out there to observe how people were treating the farm workers.
So where was the lawyers group from?
From Sacramento.
Oh, okay. So you guys were going
We were in Davis.
And there were lots of farms near
Oh yes. And lots of workers.
So.
I'm trying to remember the time that I had met Cesar Chavez. Yeah, well, we all went to all the events. I wanted to participate in the Marcha de la Reconquista. I don't know if people remember that marcha, but it was where we conquered the West, California specifically, take it back, like during the mission years. Yeah. And so we all were very enthusiastic about it, but we had to work too, all of us, and we didn't want to get fired, so we would go to the sessions. Like we went to the Stockton area, We went to the Bay Area. We went to, we followed them around where we were.
So you did this while you were working?
Well, we were working at Davis, yes.
How did you juggle being a professor?
It's very hard. That's why I don't have anything published. Most of the people who were very active at that time didn't publish much. They managed to finish the dissertations, and that's all they managed to finish.
Were you taking students with you when you went?
Yes, of course, we took students.
And
we would get that car, a university
How did you
car.
guys organize it? University cars?
Yeah, we used to organize. We used to get the university cars, and we said we were going to go and assist and do research. And we took photos. We always had a staff person who was very good with photography.
Where would you end up staying? You were traveling.
No, we came back.
You go for the day and then drive back.
Yeah, or we stay with other students. Other students would give us a place. Sometimes we have money for hotels, but most of the time we did not have any money. And so I was privileged to be there as a professor, an observer that they couldn't arrest, and I could do a lot of things because they wouldn't dare arrest us. The other professors didn't know to go. I went, and Gustavo was a linguistics professor. He would go, and staff people, a lot of staff people. And we had really, I was very pleased to be able to do that. But other times, Cesar Chavez came to our campus. We brought him there. Chicago Studies did all this stuff. I mean, we were in charge of all this stuff. We had money, a little bit of money, like $1,000, something like that. We thought that was great. Right? We never had anybody give us money to go into a political action. And so we went with enthusiasm.
Did you guys have to do fundraisers and stuff?
Yeah, we did fundraisers too. Yeah, we did that too.
What was it like? Because you were the first Latina to get her Ph.D. in political science?
That's what they tell me.
Okay. So far as you know,
as far as I know.
But there could be
Chicana.
Or Chicana.
Because there were some Latinas from Latin America.
From Latin America.
In the American Political Science Association.
Got it.
Liliana Umbrek was one of them.
Oh, okay.
Liliana. She was Venezolana, I think.
What was that like being a professor, a woman, and being a Latina or Chicana and a professor during that time period?
I had a very hard time. I didn't know the protocol. I don't know how a professor's supposed to act.
For farm workers.
Yeah, 60s they were not any better than 1940. No better. And that is to say, we didn't have any running water in toilets, no running water to drink, no running water in the fields. And they didn't have it then. And that's what appalled us. I think all of us who were in the movement, all of us who were adults, who were professors or were staff people at the university level, we had all been experienced in, I think, in farm work. And we had all done this kind of routine of going to work in the summers or going to the fields in the summers, going to school in the winter. And so everybody was kind of in the same place, even though we didn't know each other. So there was a lot of strikes, a lot of action in between the war and the farm workers' struggle.
Yeah.
That time.
When you were working in the
Well,
field,
we went to San Jose.
You were in San Jose.
Yeah, we went to San Jose because somebody told my father that there was a lot of work up there.
You drove from Colton to San Jose?
We drove from Colton to San Jose.
And you stayed there?
And we lived there in this shed, this drying shed. And then we go home in September. And then we would come back. We came back in June. And we did that for 3 or 4 years in a row. Because there was no work in Colton. Yeah. There were no jobs. And people were hungry.
Did you guys have a car? Or how did you
No, we borrowed my brother's car. My brother got out of the military.
Okay.
And he had some veterans benefits, and he bought a car.
So your brother was in World War II?
Yes, my brother, my oldest brother. Yeah. And my next brother was in Korean War. And my other brother was in the Vietnam War.
All three?
Yes, only one of them didn't serve. He served, but he didn't go to war. I worked in the fields.
You did work in the fields?
When I was a little girl. When I was 14. 13 and 14, 15 years old.
Tell everybody what that was like.
That was an experience and a half.
Yeah.
I don't regret having done it because I know what it is to work and live like an immigrant or a migrant farm worker. And we went for 3 months. We went and we picked this one person's field.
Okay.
And I learned what it was to be a peon, to be in the bottom of the barrel. Because in Colston, we were in the bottom of the barrel, but at least we lived inside a house. We didn't have to live in a tent, and we didn't have to go smelling into school. We had running water, things like that. So it was an experience that you have to live it. It's like living homeless. It was like living homeless, except we had a roof over our head, not a very good roof. But and it didn't rain in the summer very much, but it was, once maybe a summer. So we never got the rain. But the conditions were extremely primitive. To live there. And then the people who didn't have a place to live, they just lived in their cars or tents, or the tents. And what they would do, they would put up a backing. The backing would be made out of fruit trays where we put the fruit to dry.
Okay,
and then they would have a tent in front.
Oh, okay.
And most of the people lived that way. We didn't. We got to live in a shack. It was a drying shed and a sorting shed. So we lived inside this thing and had all the machinery.
So what type of things
Stuff.
were you guys, and when you were helping in the fields, what type of things did you, what type of produce?
We were picking prunes.
Prunes?
And they are for drying.
Okay.
So, the prunes you buy, they're in bags that are dry. We went to San Jose in 1947, 48, something like that. My father wanted us to stay in San Jose. He said there was more job opportunities up there than in Colston. So he had planned to stay. And so we were tested for a year. That was my freshman year in high school. But I had this other determination. I was living in Berkeley. and so we stayed September, October, and November. We came back for Thanksgiving. Came back to Colston. My sister was living in our house. And we came back to Colston. And we refused to go back. My brother and I, we went back to school. But in San Jose, we signed up for school. Very few other kids that were farm worker children went to school in the area where they were working, where they were picking fruit. But there's no jobs in the winter for them. There's no jobs. What do? They do hack a few weeds and pull all the weeds and do really close work. So there was no jobs in the summer, in the winter. So we were there in the wintertime and it started raining. And we lived in a shack, remember? And it leaked and we didn't have any hot or cold running water in the house. We didn't have a toilet. We had to go outside for an outhouse. That was pretty scary at night. Because it was out in the fields. It wasn't that far away. Huh?
No lights?
Oh, no. And there were no street lights because it was rural area. No towns. And so we were out there in this Tullyville, and it was raining. And my mother said no. She said, I'm going to go back. Because she said, I have a house in Colston, and I'm going to stay here. Well, how are you going to support herself? She said she didn't know. We would have to help her. And so she stayed in Colston. I don't know how she supported us. My father would send her money. Always send her money. But not that much. So I don't know how they did it. I can't even fathom how they made it, how she made it through those. It was 6 months that we stayed there in San Jose. And when we went out of the house, it was in a pool of water. Because it would rain quite a lot more there than it does here. And so we just couldn't hack it. But I went to school. My brother and I went to school. Well, my two brothers, my three brothers and I went to school. We enrolled in Sunnyvale High School. My father always called it Sanibel. That's what it was spelled. Sanevil.
Were there other kids at the school who were?
Yeah, but there was not very many.
Not very many were.
Maybe 6.
Okay.
You know, talking about one hand, count them on one hand. There was us, and then there
going to
was.
school and working in the fields then?
Well, we didn't. There wasn't any work. Only thing we did was pick walnuts.
What's it like to pick walnuts?
Picking walnuts is, I don't know. It's hard, but it's not like as hard as prunes. Prunes are hard to pick because they are in the sun. It's hot. In the season, then it's really hot. They finish picking those in August. Well, walnuts are picked in November, in October, so it's not a lot cooler by then. And then they also use mechanism. They had these walnut pickers, so they put tarps on the ground and shake the trees, and then you pick them up off the ground.
Did people ever get in trouble if they didn't pick enough?
Get into trouble like what kind? Like
What would happen if you didn't pick enough stuff for the day? Or like, how did you
You
get?
didn't get any food.
You didn't get any food?
Well, no. There was no store close to us.
Who fed you guys?
I don't know. So I say I don't know.
Okay.
No
What
idea.
about, did you get to take breaks? If you get tired, what would happen?
No. Well, we were kids. We didn't know any better.
You guys tried to get
We
out
just
tired.
no. My mother wouldn't let us get out of work because she would go out and work. If we were slacking off, she would be working.
So would they like pay you guys as a family then?
As a family, yes.
Okay, so if you had kids, you could pick more.
Well, you would pick more, but the kids didn't. We didn't get any money for it.
Yeah.
My mother told us she would give us money, a little bit. She gave us $50 for school. So we didn't have much. But I guess everybody else was in the same boat, more or less. And so it was a poor town. Colton was poor. Everybody in Colton was poor. So and there wasn't any rich middle class in Colton. Colton was like a Mexican town in Mexico. I would
Did you guys
imagine.
have like radio to listen to? Or what would you do
We
for
had
fun
radio.
when you
Yeah,
were
we
there?
did have radio.
Okay. What
We
would you
didn't
guys do
have-
for fun while you were on the
In San Jose. In San Jose.
Yeah.
Nothing. We got home at 8 o'clock. We quit working at 8 o'clock. My father would come home from his job, which was like in Palo Alto or one of the places there where they were building a lot of housing. And he would come home around what time? 6:30, 7. And he would have us work for another hour till it got dark.
Fields?
Yeah, pick fruit or fruit, and he would help us pick all this fruit after he'd put in a full day of work, instruction. He would help us. And so we had a little bit of extra money, but I don't think we had much. I remember one of the times we went there, the crop didn't come in, it didn't ripen yet, and it was June, end of June, and it didn't ripen. And so we didn't have any food. And I remember the next door,
Turn it off. Go ahead.
the woman who who was across the street from us, picking that ranch, she came over and borrowed some potatoes, a couple of potatoes that she could eat feeding her family. So I don't know how my mother did it, to tell you the truth. She was a miracle worker or something. But we went to Sunnyvale High School, so it was good and bad. It was hard to transfer like that. But I was a freshman, and you had time to make things up. But I just always thought it was an interesting process of how people got to know different places. And they would know where to go the next year. They had quite a network of communication, yeah.
Did you guys have cell phones?
No, we didn't have any phones at
Did you
all.
have computers?
No, we had nothing.
Then how did you guys know where to go?
I don't know, but my father always knew. And people would yell at him on the highway, "Hey, Sosa," just random people.
On the highway?
Yeah, everybody knew my father in different towns. He liked San Jose. And I was offered a job at San Jose State when I applied for positions. And my father said, "Oh, let's go to San Jose. I like San Jose."
Why do you think you like San Jose so much?
I don't know. There were more people. The town was not so poor. The people were not so poverty-stricken.
Some more opportunities.
Yeah, there was a little more opportunities, a little more adventure. But he made his own opportunities. It was his work.
You were littler, right? Not when you were.
This is when I was young. When I was young. Well, my classmates were fine with it. I went to an all-Mexican school.
An all-Mexican school?
Yes.
What was that like?
You know, we had, all of us came out of there with, out of our schools with post-traumatic stress syndrome. Mm-hmm. I could only describe it that way, looking back.
What was your school like?
Well, it was brutal. It's a brutal situation. The teachers were all Anglos. All of them were very quiet. We never raised our voices or anything. So they would brutalize us, you know, they would make us stand in the corners. And I got spanking in
They
my
would
first.
spank you?
Yeah, they gave me my first day in class. I got a spanking, and I'd never been spanked in my life.
Do you remember why you got it?
Yes, I remember. I liked swinging on the swings. They had swings in the school. Right, a swing, man.
You like the swing?
I love the swings. Yeah, we only got to the swings when we went to the park.
Yeah.
Maybe twice a year or something. And so I didn't want to come in from what do they call it, recess. I didn't want to come inside the house, inside the school. I wanted to stay out there all afternoon. And the teacher spanked me. She didn't spank me hard, I must admit. But she did spank me. And other kids were told off things like stupid Mexicans. We had one incident, and this was in junior high, where
What, junior high?
an incident.
An incident. What type of
Where,
incident?
well, this was for Easter, around this time of year, right? For Easter, for the Dia de los Cruces, Ceniza, Ash on Ash Wednesday.
Ash Wednesday?
Almost all the kids in my school were Catholic, almost all of them but me. So maybe one other person might have been, I don't know, evangelical Christian or something. And one of our students came in late, one of the kids. But he was an older boy. They had released these older boys that were going to drop out of school. They released them from the juvenile hall, I guess. I don't know where they came from, but they came to our classroom, and they were at least 2 years older than we were. So they were like 15 when we were 13. So they were big boys, real nice, tall, you know. Well, we thought they were tall. They probably weren't very tall, but we thought they were tall. And anyway, this boy came in late, and he had his crucifix on his forehead. And the teacher stopped and told him, you go to the bathroom and you wash that heathen sign off your face.
Heathen sign.
Heathen sign. She said, I didn't know what heathen was, but I could guess. Pagan or, you know, something wild. So I said to oops.
You're good.
I said to to myself, I said, oh boy, we got problems. And sure enough, the boy got up and was going to beat that.
He beat up somebody?
He was going to hit the teacher.
Oh, he was going to hit the teacher.
But somebody else came in, one of the hall monitors or one of the staff people, and stopped him. But all hell broke loose in the classroom.
Yeah.
Well, the kids were jumping on top of their desks.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
This is the incident.
Yeah. And I was sitting there quietly because I was not Catholic. So I didn't care what they called me Catholic. They called me heathen. That's okay with me. So the teacher said to me, and you stupid Mexican, wipe that grin off your face.
Yeah.
Well, they threw the kid out of school.
They threw him out of school.
We were in 7th grade. They threw him out of school.
So out of all the people that you went to school with, how many people ended up going to college?
You know, to tell you the very truth, the real truth, is a lot of them did. But they had a hiatus. When they got out of high school, they didn't have any entrance to college. But gradually we came upon some people who cared about what the Mexicanos had to endure in this little town. And they encouraged them to go to community college. Ada, remember, that when we were in high school, after our sophomore year, they dropped us all, took us all out of the classes. All the boys, the ones who were still in school, the rest of them had dropped out. So you had a bunch of a cohort, like maybe a third of the class would drop out after a freshman year. And then there would be some left. And then there would be the nerds, and there would be the sports people.
Yeah.
Maybe. And he said, and they put us in one class, auto shop. All the Mexicanos were over there in auto shop.
Oh, so they took them, the kids that were still in school,
yeah,
them all in auto shop?
Yeah, they only had one course for them.
That was it?
That was it. That's what he said. And I said, oh, I wonder what happened to you guys. I said, why aren't they in my class? Why aren't they in English 3?
So all the Latino guys were in auto shop?
That's what they told me. That's what they said. And sure enough, those guys, they were nothing in high school. They didn't get awards. They didn't get recognition. And they didn't get any training of any kind. But later on, they all went into college. But they never went through the 4 years. They all went through community college.
Well, they didn't get a chance to be a 4 year.
No, they didn't get a chance. They didn't have a chance. And well, people ask me, why was I given that chance? I don't know. I suppose it's fate. But mostly I think it was because I fell in love with my sister's occupation, or what my sister was doing. She'd bring home books, lots of books, and I would read them. I'd read nursing books for fun. and I had all this time, I wanted to go to Berkeley since I was 6 years old. Since my sister came home and said, I'm going to Berkeley. To UC Berkeley. She went to UC Berkeley after community college years. So she was one smart cookie. Because her degree was in biological sciences. So she could have done anything she wanted. But she was restrained because of her experience of being a woman. Just because she was a woman, she was not encouraged to do more. I'll never succeed in anything.
What was college like during the 1950s? Because I feel like it was probably a lot different than it is now.
Not so different. I don't think it was that different.
Did you live on campus?
I did for a while, for a year.
What was it like to live in the dorms?
It was all right. I mean, they were nice, vulnerable kids. They were very racist, and there was a lot of sexism. Tremendous amount of sexism. They probably hurt me more than the race issue. So, but it was great. We have what?
Curfews.
Yeah, 11 o'clock. In fact, the reason I got married was because I didn't want to put up with curfews anymore. And I had enough. I was 19, 20 years old.
When you got married?
Yeah, and I didn't want to go through curfews. I didn't want to live like that, hiding and getting into trouble. It wasn't me. I wanted to graduate from college. I had 4 dreams when I was a kid. These are going to be odd dreams to you. That is that I wanted to go to college. I wanted to graduate from high school and go to college. And I wanted to I wanted my family to be nice to the little kids that were brought in by members of the family. Without parents, without fathers, deadbeat fathers. And I wanted them to be treated well. And I wanted to go to college and graduate from college. And I wanted to build a house for my parents. Those were my dreams. And so I wouldn't let anything deter me from that. Nothing. I was just. And when I met my husband, I said to him, I want to build a house for my parents. And I won't marry anybody who will not do that with me. And so he said, I think it's a great idea. And he did. We did do that. We did exactly that. Because I tell you, I didn't say that to you. We lived, Colton is located right next to a cement plant. You dig up, it's a mountain, it's called Mount what? I've forgotten. Mount Slover. And it's huge. It was huge. Now they're digging down below the surface now. And so they're digging down. And they said there's as much shellfish life down there as there has been above. It's taken them a century and a half to say. Well, no, a century to dig that out. So most of the people who lived there worked there in the cement plant. But it was a non-union shop. My father wouldn't work there, and they fired him because he was organizing people. They fired him at Kaiser State for organizing.
They fired your dad?
Yeah, they fired him. They blacklisted him, or what they call it, blacklisted. For organizing union activities for the union. By this time, it was 50s, 60s.
So during that time, were you guys ever scared for his safety or your safety?
Yeah, sure. But not from the neighbors, not from the Mexicano population, but from the police. The police were dreadful to us.
What kind of things did the police do?
Stopping us, and my father was arrested a couple of times for union organizing. He sold paletas. He went and sold paletas to the people in El Monte. I think one of those strikes that was in the grape fields. Mm-hmm. And he never talked about it. Anyway, he got arrested. It was in Orange County. I should go look up arrest records. But I haven't had time to do that.
He was arrested in Orange County?
Yeah.
Did you ever find out what happened or no?
No, I haven't. But that's why I say I should go and look up the record. See what I can find.
When you came back?
No, it was before I was born.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying. This was in the 30s. So organizing among workers, but not farm workers, was back to the 1900s, 1890s. So it's been an effort to really try to organize it. Well, my father didn't approve of us having to work in the field because he said they don't pay union wages. He believed in the worker should be organized, everything should be union shop, close to union shop. And so he was a union man. He believed in the unions. He believed in the Mexican Revolution. He believed in left-wing things.
So was your dad
Socialism.
in a union?
He was in a union. He was a member of the hod carriers.
The which one?
Hod carriers union.
Okay.
Hod carriers.
Did they ever have to go on strike, or do you remember?
No, I remember them going on strike. Hod carriers are the people who carry the cement in a little pail, a little shovel, after the plasterer, and they carry it. So they're just workers. And that's what my father was a member of, that union. But he was a very avid union man. And so he approved of anything I did with the union farm workers. I wanted to organize farm workers since I was 14, and that day the Department of Labor was going to come. I wanted to be there because I wasn't going to tell them, these guys make us work and they don't pay us very well. I was going to tell on the worker or on the farmer. It's just that nobody had tried to organize farm workers. Well, no, they did. There was a Monte berry strike here in the LA area.
El Monte?
El Monte, yeah. It's famous, the strike. And there were, that was 30-something. 37? Yeah.
What happened with that strike?
I don't know it very much, but there is a book written on it.
Okay, we'll find the book and have them Google it.
Yeah, because I wasn't here.
Yeah.
I didn't work here in this area. So
What was your mom's life like? 'Cause she was alive during that time.
My mother was a wonderful woman. I call her a perfect mom. She was kind. She was patient. She never yelled and cussed at us. Never. And when she got older and she didn't have to take care of 10 kids or 12 kids, She took care of her son's kids too, of her grandchildren. When she got past that age when she was able to get her out, she joined my father in his activity. His activity was to organize a group of, what do they call them, mutualistas? Mutualistas, the mutual benefit societies. My father was involved in almost everything at one point in time, in his 40s. And he organized a Sociedad Progresista Mexicana. And they would protect the people's rights, more civic rights, like to make sure they had decent burial, and make sure they had cultural celebration, stuff like that. So he did that all his years that I knew him. And then my mother joined him, and she became the secretary of the organization. And my father was never president because my father was he was too intense for people. They were over here, and he was 10 miles away, ahead of them.
Did your dad get along with a lot of people in your neighborhood?
Yes, he did, but he also made a lot of enemies.
Oh, how did he make enemies?
Well, they red-baited him.
Red-baited him?
Yeah, he was busted. He was arrested for being a member of a political party when he was an undocumented or he was an alien. And it's against the law according to the McCarran Act. So he was arrested for that. He was going to be deported. That was in 1954.
So how was he not deported? What happened?
Because they decided that he had too many kids that they would have to support. Because all of us were born here in the U.S. and we all said we would not go to Mexico. We would stay here with my sister. My mother said, I'm going to go with your father. You guys can come or stay. So we're going to stay with poor Vida, my older sister. My family was divided.
Your family was divided. Tell us more about that.
Well, one of my brothers, he was very right-wing. He may have liked to work with the farm workers, but he didn't acknowledge them as having anything to offer him. He was ambitious. He wanted to be a doctor. He became a dentist and he made lots of money. But he never got enjoyed in our activities, the activities of the movimiento. But my other brother, my older brother, Randy, he was not involved at all in school activities. And he didn't go to college out of high school, but he went to college, community college, and studied math, engineering. And he became an engineer. And he was the head of the Affirmative Action Committee. So he went after hiring a lot of Chicanos for the Caltrans, when they opened up Caltrans. So he made it up to some high-level manager.
See, one brother became a dentist.
And one brother became an engineer.
And then you became a professor.
Yes, and my
sisters became nurses.
Yes, right. And my oldest brother, he became an engineer also. And my youngest brother. Yes, we were.
Was anything about your family that helped, or why?
But I looking back, and I have kept contact with many of my friends, or my classmates. They all did very well. They weren't hoodlums. They weren't bad kids. They weren't bad people. They all did pretty well. No, not this one. I told you should ask me what I think, where I stand now, where the situation stand now.
I'll ask that one. Where do you stand now?
Okay, I would still do anything.
Where do you stand now on what's happening with
the farmers? I think they've gotten a dirty deal. I think that they've been put down for things that have nothing to do with the farm worker organizing. I don't think Cesar Chavez was ever after a cult. If he is, it's because he's demented, and I don't blame him. After all his hunger strikes, I'm surprised he was still standing after all that stuff. But I think they've done him dirty. The writers, everything. The people who have commented on him obviously never picked and had never been on the fields like he was. So he gave up a lot. And so did Dolores Huerta. Gave up a lot. But they're still on operation. And I don't think they're going to die. And you said die out completely. I don't think so. Another 10 years, somebody else will come back and say they want to organize farm workers. But there may not be farm workers in the same way that we know them. So we have to, if you want to be part of the movement that organizes it, if you believe in your workers being organized, then you have to be ready for change, for changing your position. You can't just do it because they're wonderful. You know, they're not just wonderful. They're human beings, vulnerable. They don't have very much. And I still see people who look like farm workers or who come out of the field. You can see them in the videos. And
Like
it hasn't
fires.
changed. Yeah, and things haven't changed. There's communities out there that are still living the same way. And then there's a lot of indigenous people that come from Mexico. And are living out there in high desert where we don't see them. And how much do we know about them?
So what do you think about Chavez's legacy?
Well, I think he's carrying a bad legacy. People are really putting him down. And I don't know why. What is it? What are they getting out of it?
So you're talking about when people are talking about the anti-immigration stuff?
Yes.
What are your thoughts about that?
Well, the fact that they were willing to give up a middle-class existence to help people who had nothing. They were willing to do that. I thought that was very admirable. And they were willing to take on the system of, you know, not only did they have to take on the educational system, but they had to take on the worker system. But they had to take on the medical establishment. And they don't have still any medical coverage. They had to take on the schools because they didn't have adequacy of teaching, the ability to teach migrant children. They treated them like dirt. And they were migrants. See, the farm workers movement has collapsed. They're still there, but the conditions are different. But they're no better off. I mean, here we got people in cages, young kids in cages. It's crazy. It's crazy. So we don't have a good grasp. The farm workers, did not have a good grasp on the issues. And we might have the scholars, but we didn't do anything about it. And that's why I think we should be going. We should be using our picket signs and our pens. Since we're scholars, we don't really know how to organize. We should be using the tools that we do have, which is our brain and our typing or writing or communication, social communication, to help the people that are suffering this condition. Not to hurt them, not to call them cultists or Catholic. They say they're evangelical. Well, so what? They still need help. They're still human beings. And they still should have their families. And they still shouldn't be separated from their children, the adults. And they shouldn't have to live in migrant form, and they shouldn't have to live without education. A lot of the migrant camps have closed down, but the people are still there. Cesar Chavez, he didn't fail, but he came short. They tore him down.
Who tore Chavez down?
Well, I think the right wing in the United States. There's a lot of anti-labor forces in the United States. You know, there's still that.
Conversation about Chavez now that he was.
They all put him down that he was a born-again Christian and that he was too Catholic. All that's nonsense. It doesn't matter. What matters is that he put his life on the line more than once. He didn't teach his workers to do fasts and what did they say? Cleansing, calling cleansing. He did that himself. He didn't ask anybody else to do it. He went on hunger strikes because that's all he had as a weapon was his own body. What the rest of us have as a weapon? Well, I argue that I have my picket sign and my poems, and that's my fight back. I don't know how to use a machete. I don't know how to use a gun. I don't own it. I couldn't stab anybody. I can't even stab a mouse. But I can write, and that's what my father told me to do. When he died, he passed me his mantle and said, "You go back. You don't never stop. Never, no matter what's wrong with you, no matter what you lose, and you have to do." So that's what I'm doing.